Hi everyone, I'm Melanie McGuy's fertility dietitian, and I am literally so excited to guide you through this explainer today. We are going to explore some truly fascinating research that sits right at the intersection of everyday food and complex reproductive science. Now, before we dive into the heavy biological data, I want to frame our conversation around a really beautiful concept. In the Islamic faith, there's this profound principle known as al-aqd bil asbab. Basically, this means taking practical, scientific, worldly steps while ultimately trusting God for the final outcome. We know, without a doubt, that children are a divine blessing, but it's also our absolute duty to respect the miraculous design of our bodies by preparing them. We do the biological work, we tie our camels, so to speak, and then we seek the blessing. Now, as your dietitian, I have to be brutally honest with you right out of the gate. We are definitely not talking about some glamorous million-dollar superfood today. No way. We're talking about something that, quite frankly, a lot of people mistake for bird food or even horse feed. But as you're about to see, this highly unassuming, incredibly cheap ingredient is hiding a massive biological secret when it comes to your reproductive health.
So let me just hit you with our first big question of the day. Would you be willing to eat actual sawdust if I told you it could definitively boost your IVF success rates by an incredible 20%? I mean, I am dead serious. It sounds like a total joke, right? You'd normally think a massive jump in success like that would require some cutting-edge, wildly expensive medical intervention, or maybe a specialized new injection. But actually, this unglamorous secret ingredient is just bran. Yup, bran. Simply put, bran is the hard, protective outer layer of cereal grains. We're talking wheat, oats, rice. It's literally the exact part of the grain that gets aggressively stripped away and just tossed in the trash when we process grains into fluffy white flour or quick-cook white rice. We are literally throwing away the best part. By tossing out the bran, we're tossing out some of the most potent nutritional tools our bodies have to prepare for a healthy pregnancy.
Okay, let's dive into this. What exactly is inside this so-called bird food that makes it so medically powerful? Unlocking bran's power really comes down to its incredibly dense nutritional profile. It's kind of like nature's ultimate multivitamin. First up, we've got fiber. Fiber is an absolute reproductive powerhouse because it actively helps regulate your blood sugar levels. And this is absolutely crucial if you're dealing with conditions like PCOS, where insulin resistance is often the biggest roadblock to conception. Next, bran is just loaded with essential B vitamins. These are fundamental for supporting healthy ovulation and keeping your hormones in check. Then, there's iron. Iron is simply non-negotiable for developing viable, healthy eggs and physically preparing your circulatory system to carry a pregnancy. Throw in some magnesium, which is amazing for calming the nervous system and the uterus, along with a massive dose of antioxidants, and suddenly, this plain old bran stops looking like sawdust and starts looking like a highly specialized tool designed explicitly for your reproductive system.
But look, we aren't just making educated guesses here. We have hard, undeniable clinical data to back this all up. Enter the Harvard Earth Study. Just think about the irony of this for a second. You've got brilliant, highly funded scientists at Harvard Medical School, and instead of studying a million-dollar laser, they put down their microscopes to rigorously study the discarded outer shell of a wheat grain. And this wasn't some tiny observational blog post. This research was published in the highly respected, peer-reviewed medical journal Fertility and Sterility. These researchers set out with a very targeted goal. They wanted to know for sure if eating more whole grains could directly influence the highly medicalized outcomes of in vitro fertilization.
To get their answers, the researchers rigorously followed almost 300 women who are actively going through intense IVF treatments. Now, let me tell you a little secret from the dietitian world. Tracking diets in a scientific study takes an immense amount of precision. Because, let's face it, we all kind of lie to our dietitians about how many donuts we ate over the weekend, right? But these researchers didn't just ask the women how they generally felt. They assessed their daily dietary intake using incredibly detailed, comprehensive food questionnaires. They needed to know exactly what was going in, how much was true whole grain, and how much was refined junk. By methodically tracking nearly 300 emotionally charged IVF journeys, they built a concrete data set to finally answer the question, does eating whole grains genuinely matter for embryo implantation and live births?
Now, what's really interesting about this is that when the data finally came back, the sheer magnitude of the results was a total plot twist for the fertility community. Listen to this. Women who had the highest intake of whole grains leading up to their IVF cycles had a 53% chance of a live birth. Meanwhile, the women in the lowest intake group, they only had a 35% chance. We are talking about an 18 to 20% difference in live birth success rates. In the high-stakes world of fertility treatments, where literally every single percentage point is fought for with immense emotional, physical, and financial effort, a 20% leap just from everyday dietary choices is absolutely staggering. It's a massive attention-grabbing statistic that completely forces us to reevaluate the raw power of what we put on our plates every single morning. But researchers being researchers, they dug a little deeper into the numbers, and they found something incredibly specific. The biological benefit wasn't actually coming from all parts of the grain equally. The magic was isolated mostly to the bran itself. The data showed that women who had a specifically higher intake of bran showed noticeably thicker endometrial linings right at the exact time of their embryo transfer. And why does this matter so much? Well, the endometrium is the inner lining of your uterus. It's the vital landing pad where the embryo absolutely needs to implant to successfully start a pregnancy. A thicker, healthier, well-nourished lining means you're providing a significantly more receptive, welcoming environment for that precious embryo to take hold and actually grow.
So the brilliant science behind how bran physically thickens that uterine lining comes down to a specific compound called lignans. Lignans are a type of phytoestrogen. Basically, that means they're plant-based compounds that naturally mimic very mild estrogen-like effects inside the human body. When you eat bran, you're sending these lignans directly into your system, where they actively get to work supporting the receptivity of the endometrium. They directly improve both the physical thickness and the overall structural quality of your uterine lining. To me, this just perfectly illustrates that concept of Alacot Bilis Bobs we talked about. We're using the incredibly precise natural tools provided in nature to scientifically support our body's complex design. This supposed sawdust is essentially acting as a brilliant natural biological scaffolding system for your uterus.
So, bringing it all together, bran is basically a biological multitasker, working miracles through a three-pronged approach. Step 1 is protection. The bran layer is just packed with antioxidants like vitamin E. These act as a microscopic shield, protecting both the egg and the sperm from oxidative stress. And that's vital, because if oxidative stress gets too high, it can physically damage DNA and completely disrupt early implantation. Step 2 is preparation. As we just covered, those incredible lignans go straight to work thickening the uterine lining, literally preparing the perfect, plush bed for the embryo. And step 3 is regulation. The heavy, dense dose of dietary fiber vastly improves your insulin sensitivity and keeps your blood sugar remarkably stable. Since severe insulin resistance is directly linked to ovulation failures and PCOS symptoms, keeping those metabolic levels stable beautifully balances your entire reproductive hormone profile. Okay, practical time, because, let's be real, from a culinary standpoint, we have a slight problem. Plain bran is terribly dry and super boring. Absolutely no one wants to just sit there and eat a bowl of dry sawdust with a spoon. So, as your dietitian, I am officially authorizing you to go into stealth mode. You have to treat bran like a top-secret agent and just sneak it into the delicious meals you already love to eat. For breakfast, simply toss a spoonful of oat or wheat bran right into your morning fruit smoothie. It blends perfectly and you get all the biological benefits without any weird flavor. For a snack, discreetly sprinkle it over a bowl of Greek yogurt with some fresh berries and nuts. If you love baking, it's so easy to sneak it into homemade berry muffins. And for dinner, you can completely hide it inside savory, rich soups and stews. It acts as a slight natural thickener, you'll hardly notice it's there, but your reproductive system will absolutely thank you for the classified intel.
But wait, actually, scratch that, hold your horses, pun absolutely intended. Before you rush out, buy a 50-pound sack of raw bran and start eating it by the fistful, we need to talk about the danger cliffhanger here. The too much bran trap. This is absolutely crucial to understand. You want a beautifully balanced fertility diet, not an extreme one. See, bran is incredibly rich in soluble fiber. If you aggressively overdo it and consume way too much soluble fiber too quickly, it basically creates a blockade in your digestive tract. An overload of bran will actually interfere with your body's ability to absorb essential dietary minerals, specifically zinc and iron. And ironically, zinc and iron are two of the most crucial minerals required for fertility. So more is absolutely not always better. The goal here is to intelligently include bran simply as one small, consistent part of a highly varied, balanced diet that's already rich in colorful fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, and healthy fats. Which brings us to our final thought for the day. Look, if the idea of hunting down bran still just doesn't appeal to you, please do not panic. The overarching scientific message from the Harvard study is the immense, undeniable value of whole grains in general. If bran isn't your thing, you can still get phenomenal reproductive benefits from incorporating other whole grains like brown rice, quinoa, whole oats, or buckwheat. The key is simply to make whole, unprocessed grains a regular, consistent part of your ala Octabil Hesbab, your worldly preparation. So I'll leave you with this final question. After seeing that massive 20% difference in the Harvard data, are you going to start acting like a secret agent and formally join Team Bran, or are you sticking to your trusty quinoa and brown rice? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'm Melanie Magis, reminding you to trust the process, take your scientific steps, and always keep seeking out the science behind your everyday choices. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.